So if people don't want to be part of a video, they can stop their video.
Yep.
But this is so that other people who weren't able to make it and want to hear what the questions were have that opportunity.
Thank you.
We'll go down to the bottom. of the
Barry,
screen.
this is Roxanne. Am I muted?
No,
No, you're unmuted right now.
I'm unmuted right now. Okay. I didn't have an opportunity to put together a list of questions. Will I be able to ask them when we start, after we get the meeting started?
Well, you're not the only one at the meeting, Roxanne. We'll ask for
I just-
people, we'll ask for people to preferably put their questions in the chat so that we can then answer those that there wasn't time for in this 1 hour time slot. But then if you raise, but the other way of asking questions is to raise your hand. And I think we'll take one main question rather than a whole list of questions, because again, it's only an hour and we already have 39 people who have signed up. So if you can do it in order of the importance of your questions. And then,
Yeah, I'll just have to listen because I can't do a raised hand or a chat. So I'll just listen. Thank you.
right, okay.
hey Roxanne, you can always use mental telepathy and send your question that way to either me or
Right.
Barry.
Yes, you can, otherwise known as email.
Hi, Barry. Hi, Brad. Hello,
Mimi.
everyone. Hi. I'm
So-
recuperating.
Oh, hope it's going well.
Okay, it's 5:30, sorry, 2:30. I'm on the East Coast, so
And it keeps forgetting that.
yeah, sorry. So why don't we get started?
Okay. And so, as you can see, my name is Brad Waite. I'm the president of Sustainable Rossmoor, and Barry Bryan is our vice president. And we may get visited by Adrian Byram, but
Adrian is
probably
here.
not. It was
Adrian.
Adrian here? Oh, good.
He is.
Okay. Adrian is the chair of our Renewable Energy Committee, and he's the brainchild behind all the work we've been doing this year on shared solar, et cetera. So when we have questions, we always defer to Adrian for the official answer, but we've been working on this long enough that we've got a pretty good idea what we're talking about. And so so this session, as you know, is for mutuals 3, 4, 8, 40, 70.
That's it.
That's it. Not for mutual 1 and 2, just because mutual 1 and 2 is they're different. Their options are more limited than what all of you and the other mutuals have. Okay. So again, we talked about putting the questions in chat, and or you can raise your hand electronically. If you don't know how to do that, if you go down the wherever your Zoom control panel is, mine is the bottom of my screen. There's an icon over on the right that says reactions. You click on that, and one of the ones down the bottom says raise hand. And when you do that, that will pop you up to the top #1 position, like it did just did for Paul on the screen, so I can see who's got their hands raised in what order. Okay. And so while we wait for people to type in questions in the chat, which Barry will look through and feed us sometimes, why don't you go ahead, Paul, unmute yourself and ask your question, and we'll.
while he's unmuting, Mary Franklin asks, company called Yes, who are they? And Your Energy Solutions, they have installed at least 12 residents at Rossmoor. They are a recommended installer company. Perhaps Brad or Adrian have more information.
So I used them for my installation about a year ago. And I used them because I have a professional acquaintance who at the time was a vice president of Enphase, which is one of the manufacturers of the inverter component in a solar system. Enphase is $1 billion company located here in Fremont. I asked my acquaintance, so this is what I'm doing. Who's the best installer in my region? And this is who he suggested. And in fact, I've since subsequently worked with him on a couple of other projects where I've been managing the project for friends and seen the work they've done with a number of other people and at Rossmoor, and they've always been high quality. They've been around for about 15 years, I believe.
Well, you have to go back to.
Okay, so, yeah, but everybody do us a favor, and if you're not asking
Yeah.
a question or asking, would you please make sure keep yourself muted? So we don't
Yeah.
hear your dog barking or whatever.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that.
Great.
Okay, Paul is now unmuted. So Paul, why don't you ask your question?
Well, I was shocked by the quotation because apparently Mutual 70 has made a decision that won't allow participation by two residents in different buildings. I was unaware of that. There's been no communication from the mutual, although with Mutual 70, their communications are kind of weak anyhow. What's this all about? I mean, in other words, in Mutual 70, unless you're being matched with somebody in your building, you're on your own.
I believe,
Yeah, so you have the choice of a shared system or an individual system. There's some advantages to the shared, there's some advantage to the individual. And under the current solar policies of all of the mutuals, right now, you're only allowed an individual system. The shared systems are not currently allowed. Mutual 3 their board has actually approved doing a shared system, but that's still that process that takes a few, like a 60-day period to actually become official policy. But they're on their path to doing that. And so as a result, yes, Mutual 70 cannot share from one building to another. That's correct.
Well, my other comment about this is that this talks about on a standalone 20 panels minimum to offset 100% of my PG&E usage. I can't figure how they can ever put 20 panels on a duplex building.
So you're in one of the dual unit or 2 unit or 4 unit?
2 unit.
Two unit buildings. There should be roof space.
We've had previous estimates and they never get anywhere near 20 panels.
Okay, well, there's 2 things we should make sure of for you before we go forward. First of all, I'm not sure whether you provided us with your actual usage or estimated.
I did.
You did, okay. So then that's the question. So if you want to offset 100%, that's the way to do it. But you could offset less and you'd still save money. You're still saving money. And the rate of return on your investment is still the same. It's just that you're not saving quite as much money, but you're not spending as much money up front either.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And so if you're interested, what we will do is we will pick you tell us which vendor you want to work with. We will give them your information. They will come out, or, using satellites, figure out what's the maximum or appropriate number of panels for you, and then make you a quote based or a contract based on that. So,
Okay,
so it
thank
will be based fact-based.
thank you.
And just to, just to make sure everybody is aware of the timeline and process from this point out. Again, we're doing these pairs of Q&A sessions to give you a chance to ask questions about the quotes you got. And with the second set for this group of mutuals is Sunday at 2:30. And then on most likely Tuesday, we'll have a presentation, a pair of presentations, one by each vendor, and to give you a chance to, kick their tires and ask them specific questions. And then by next Saturday, week from tomorrow, and you just need to have done all your thinking and due diligence to decide, yeah, I'm pretty sure I want to do this. But in order to make the final commitment, you need to let us know that by Saturday, so that we can give your information, to the contractor that you choose. And so they can, as Adrian said, they can do a design and enough to do a contract for you, get you back the contract. And then you need to, if you want to go further at that point and commit yourself, and then you return the signed contract electronically, because it'll be done by email. And I believe with the $1,000 deposit, and by, I think, the 1st of December. And then Barry,
Brad, I have a question. I have questions here, so
Okay.
I want to make the most use of the time. Mary Franklin asks, not enough people signed up in our area, so we need to go individual. Does that present a problem? I'd like to answer it as well. We've recently learned, originally we were worried that the Public Utility Commission, PUC, would not allow people to be grandfathered into NEM2 if they were individuals applying. And we have since learned from Jeff Parr at Solar Technologies just yesterday or the day before, that people, anyone who applies, whether it's individual or a small shared solar, if they apply this year, or certainly by mid-December, that they will be grandfathered in. So it does not present a problem if you need to go individual. Adrian, is there anything you want to correct on what I said?
No, that's correct. And if you look at the attachment, there is a sort of a pro and con, shared and individual. And there are definitely advantages to the individual that aren't there under the shared. So it's not an either or. It's, you can choose what makes sense.
Okay.
Next question. We should got about 56 people here, so 64 participants. So it's
Okay.
pretty amazing, actually, that we have so many people. So I want to be
Let's
sure.
have Dennis and Susan Harvey. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Thanks. This is
you got muted again.
Oh, okay. This is a follow-up to what Paul had asked earlier, I think. So the estimations of what we would need in terms of the number of panels per unit were based just on our usage and an overall assessment of what a theoretical assessment of what that would be, rather than anybody looking at individual rooftops and how shaded we are or how many panels we could accommodate. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And I mean, there's a general rule of the production amount varies from about 1,250 kilowatts per panel size to 1,600. So within that range, you'll see everything in Rossmoor's within that range.
Is the amount of kilowatts generated per, whether you sign up for 10 or 20 units, is that guaranteed?
Yes, if you go with Your Energy Solutions, they actually give you a production guarantee for 25
How
years.
about, is it,
Solar
that's
technology.
YEF?
Yeah, YES gives you that gives you a production guarantee. Solar Technologies does not. I'm sorry.
No, you're mumbling now. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Much better.
if they fail to generate enough kilowatts,
Yeah,
do they refund money?
yes.
And again, so just so we're clear, I believe what their production guarantee is that their system will produce at least 90% of what they say it will.
Well, actually, they give you a schedule,
Okay.
literally year by year for 25 years, how much it will generate.
Right. And I think what they told me is that they determine that schedule based on a percent of what they expect the system to actually produce.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
just because they've got to have some margin of variability, just because they can't control and accurately forecast the sunshine, weather, etc. Right?
Okay, let me ask another question. The kilowatts generated, for example, presumably they would generate more kilowatts in the summertime
Right.
due to more sunlight.
Yes.
It does.
My bills are higher in the winter.
Yeah.
So is this cumulative over the year?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how a net energy meeting works. Allowing for that cycle. So in the summer, you're building up credits. In the winter, you're using those credits. And then hopefully over the period of the year, it all balances out. And if it doesn't all balance out, PG&E sends you what they call a true up bill for $100 or $200. And if you're over, then they send you a miserable little check for 2 cents a kilowatt hour.
And just to follow up on that, and also to add on to the answer we gave Paul about his question, is typically for solar system like this, the rule of thumb under the current tariff structure in net energy metering 2 is you target to produce about 85% of what you normally would use an entire year. And reason why you typically don't go for 100% is because, again, the way it works if you stop and think about it, in the middle of the day when the sunshine is the highest, you're generating excess of electricity, right? And under NEM2, PG&E is required to give you credit for that excess at full retail rates. And so then when you don't use as much at night, and so come the end of the year, it should about balance out.
Okay, I have a question from Jim Sauerberg. Hello, I am in Mutual 8 and I received 3 quotes with shared and individual. Does this mean I have 3 options to choose from? Adrian, do you have an answer for that?
I mean, I think you may have stepped away. I think the answer is yes. You should have an option of individual solar with either YES or Solar Technologies, or a shared system with Solar Technologies. I think those are the 3 options. And again, and that's probably going, the shared system is going to, again, as Adrian said earlier, depend on if Mutual 8 changes the solar policy in order to, to enable, shared solar.
Okay, let's, Kenton, let's have you ask your question if you unmute yourself, please.
And then we'll go to Eleanor.
Okay, hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
My question is, I think I'm the only person in an 8-unit building in Project 54 that wants solar. So I guess, I mean, it says that there's an option that maybe if somebody in another building, but I just don't understand that.
If you're,
So is my only option just to be individual?
And you said you're mutual 3, right?
Yes.
Project 54, I think you said.
Yeah, Project
Correct.
54.
okay, there were,
So your choice is to be individual or probably it's theoretically feasible that you could share with somebody else in your project. But I'm not sure that it's really sort of worthwhile, given that.
Right, because there's multiple buildings and it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the age of some of the owners. I don't think they're seeing the payoff, so that's
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So I guess my only option is individual, and then I'll
Yeah,
end my
yeah.
question.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
as Adrian said earlier, the individual solar system does have some advantages over the shared. Likewise, the shared has some advantages over the individual. So it's not like it's a night and day preferable one direction or other. And also, yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that there are actually 3 main benefits and that we see, likely to accrue to us if we go with put our solar system up. Obviously, one is the economic. Assuming we get grandfathered into net energy metering 2, NEM 2, tariff, it'll be economically advantageous. Obviously, there's the environmental benefits of reducing your carbon footprint. And the third one is likely increase in the property value of your manor. Share with people, anybody who will listen, that when the couple moved bought the unit next door to me, the other half of my duplex, and they told me that they specifically only looked at units that already had solar installed. They would not consider anything that didn't already have solar. So, and I think that's going to become more likely to happen as time goes on.
as a follow-up, Kenton, I checked the list of participants. So there are 10 people in Project 54 that have expressed an interest. So so theoretically, if I don't know if there's a large enough rooftop or carport in 54 to handle that number, but that gives you an option, the option of shared solar if there were a large enough.
See, yeah, there's like
building.
5 or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buildings. So I don't know out of the 5 buildings, who are the 10 people?
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay,
So
but
If you talk to Susan Harris or Ron Snyder,
they'll know.
who are your sort of local representatives, they can answer that for you and help
Thank you.
figure that out.
And Gary, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, then we'll go to Eleanor.
well, there are
Okay, here
about
I
12
am.
questions here on the.
I understand that, Barry.
So am I on or off?
You're on.
You're on.
Okay, I'm one of those people, there's 3 in our unit. We're in mutual 3 on Project 54. And I had Simply Solar come out in June and give me an estimate. The estimate was the same estimate that's showing on the estimate we have, which is about total, I think it was going to be about 38,000 or 30, and whatever it is, it's the high 30s. So that the sharing does nothing for me, basically. The only way I could, because we live at the end of the unit, end of the entry rather, and we got these trees. I'm not sure even we would generate a much electricity in the summer that would add value to this, to the proposal and my cost. So it goes back to the gentleman who just before me asked the same questions. We've got entry 7, many of the carports almost all of them have solar on them, solar panels, because I think they have somewhat similar problem. So is it a big stretch then, given the fact that our unit gets no value out of this contract whatsoever, except we might as well go just with individual contracts. So is the only way out of this is to go where there's sun space in our entry, which is more halfway, more towards the entrance than it is to where we are. We're right at the end, right against the cliff here, and right above us are the big electric transformers and so forth, and a lot of redwood trees. So when I looked at this proposal, well, what it gives me nothing. Basically, the pricing for Simply Solar is the same here. So what am I getting? The only way this would be for me to share with other units or with carports or what have you. That's what it comes down to.
So that's an interesting case, Gary, where shared might be of significant advantage to you, because if you could share a rooftop with somebody else where it's much more sunny,
yes,
then you could get higher production, lower cost,
right?
And that might work out well for as a benefit for you, and that's one of the reasons for doing shared.
Yes,
is that ability.
Yeah, because they would have to have 20 panels for each of the three of us, which is a large number of panels.
Yeah,
and our roof barely accommodates that.
Yeah.
So that's the perplexity that I'm facing. And obviously, if Mutual 3 has made this approval already, I guess it's Ron Snyder is right with us on this same unit. Same entry. It would be up to us to see if we could make arrangements. Do we have to do that personally and go to owners to do that?
And
What-
go ahead, Adrian.
what you need to do is work with, Ron can help you do this, but work together to identify who wants to go in on a shared deal.
Yeah. But that would even apply with if they have a carport, that's part of their ownership, right?
If it's an attached carport, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's across the street.
Okay. Across the street is a bit of a problem because there's only a very limited amount of power, and it might require trenching to get there, and then that raises the price rather significantly.
Yeah.
So if we can keep it on the buildings where there's a power outlet, that makes a lot more sense.
Even on M3-70 did that, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Barry, you want to give us one, then we'll go to Eleanor.
Okay, in a shared, this is from Carolyn Cararelli. In a shared system, will excess consumption by one user affect the fairness of the pro rata share of the excess power reimbursed by PG&E?
No. I mean, reason being is that in a shared system is the system, all the panels are wired together and feed into one meter whose sole purpose is to feed that power back to PG&E's grid and account to PG&E for it. And PG&E then takes that generated electricity and credits on a pro rata basis to the people who are owners of that shared system. And so you'll get your proportionate credit for the production, regardless of whether your fellow users use 1 kilowatt a year or 100,000 kilowatts a year. Okay. Eleanor, you want to go next, please?
Yes, thanks. So I have several questions. Is it possible to let us speak with owners who currently are doing business with these two vendors? I'm particularly interested in Yes, because I don't know much about them, and what they're offering seems impressive. The inverter is included in the panel. They have a 25-year warranty on the inverter. Solar Tech doesn't offer that because their inverter is separate from their panels. I would really like to talk to Rossmoor owners who have experience with both these vendors to understand what their experience has been. Is that possible?
You're talking to one right now.
Okay. Well, I'll hook up with you offline, Adrian. So are you a Yes customer?
Yes, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. All right.
And if you know anybody in Mutual 48, they're all Solar Tech customers.
Right, I don't
Also
know. I may
also
know
Carol
somebody
Weed.
for 48, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I do.
Okay, I don't know if you know Carol Weed. You probably do.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
know
she's a
Carol.
Solar Tech customer.
Oh, okay, that's helpful. Um,
And also just for everyone's benefit, again, Adrian, yeah, why don't you share your story of how you came across that, yes, and why you decided to go with them, and then I'll talk about a little bit about Solar Tech, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so the reason I started with Your Energy Solutions was about a year and a half, well, probably 2 years ago now. And I was looking at solar, and I was doing a bunch of stuff. And a professional acquaintance of mine at the time was VP of marketing at Enphase. Enphase manufactures these inverters. They're a global company, about $1 billion a year revenue. And so I asked my friend, so, who should I use? And he, what's the best installer in the, East Bay area? And he gave me the name of these people. And so I got to talk to them, got to know them better. I know the co-founder, president fairly well now. And, I went with them. They did a good job for me. I managed a project for a friend of mine who lives at Rossmoor, did a good job for her. One of the other people that's on our committee that's been doing this, Anna Riburu, in Mutual 8, she used them. They've done over a dozen, I believe, here at Rossmoor. All of them have been successful. All of them have worked well. And just looking at the work they do, it's very, very professional, very clean. The way they install it, they're not jamming things in. They just do a nice quality job. And the crews are good. So that's why I'm willing to put my name behind their work.
well, that's helpful. Thanks, Adrian. I am gonna contact you offline because I have a couple other questions.
And I think, Brad, why don't you talk about your experience with ST?
Yep. And so some of you already know, but most of you probably don't, that Solar Technologies was a company that GRF selected to build their 1 megawatt solar farm that's up by MOD. And they also reselected them to do the phase 2 of their solar project, which will put solar panels over the parking lot at both Gateway and part of the event center. Also, Mutual 48 started a shared solar program about 6 years ago, and over half their manners are now participating in that. And they vetted a number of vendors, and they selected Solar Technologies and have had absolutely no trouble with them in the last 6 years. And so again, so obviously one of the things we did is we looked at a number of different vendors, and and we vetted them. We actually shrunk it down to 3 different ones. The third one opted to not participate, partially because they were swamped. They had plenty of business, didn't, et cetera. But we're pretty damn confident in both, YES and Solar Technologies. But with that said, obviously, please do your own due diligence, because ultimately it's your system, and you've got to be happy with it, et cetera. Okay.
Okay. I have another.
And a key issue that I think we need to point out here is that in order to lock in NEM2 for you, there's a process that has to be followed, and this is not the usual process followed by residential installers. There's a so-called interconnect agreement that has to be filed with PG&E. Usually in a residential installation, that interconnect agreement is filed after the system has been installed and the city inspector has been out and approved the installation. There is an option to file it early, and that's what locks in the NEM2. And both of these vendors have agreed 2 things. One, that they will do it that way. And 2, and I believe them that they will. And 2, that they are giving us an escape clause in the contract that allows, if for some reason the PUC says no, you didn't do this. We're not honoring this NEM2 stuff. You can escape for $500, which is about their cost that they will have invested at that point, because they will be paying a fee to PG&E to do this interconnect agreement. We don't believe that the PUC will say no, but we wanted to ensure that you had you weren't on a hook for something that you did not want at that point. And so these two installers have agreed to those terms. Harry?
Susan Harris asks, are we now actually certain that individual and direct connect systems will be grandfathered?
We're not certain of anything until the PUC decides.
So what
Right.
what we have been told
Yeah.
what we've been told by Jeff Parr, the CEO of Solar Technologies, is that PG&E in negotiation with the PUC and with the California Solar and Storage Association, that they've agreed that any applications, this Part A application that Adrian was referring to, that is made, that they would be grandfathered in. But that's, we haven't gotten a separate confirmation, but we put a lot of faith. Jeff has never steered us wrong in the past.
Yep.
So we have a higher bit of confidence now than we did before on that score.
Mm-hmm. But until we see it in writing from the PUC, we all know, we've all been through this before with government entities. Until it's done, it's not done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mimi, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yes, I received an email that I'm the only one, I'm in Mutual 3. I'm the only one, I wasn't sure if I'm the only one in my building or I'm the only one in my entry. I'm entry 1, project 35. And so if I'm the only one, would it be considered shared, or should I go individual? Or I don't know how it would work. And
Right.
I was also said that I only need 4 or 5 panels, and now I hear 20 or something, and I don't know what the differences are. So can you guide me through this?
Yeah.
And if I talk with neighbors and get some agreement, would the price change, or what does it change if there are more people involved in my building or my entry?
So Mimi, there were 2 people in mutual in project
35. Yeah.
35.
35.
And it pretty much means that there's not enough people there to do a shared system, because you need to have about 4 or 5 or 6 before it's just at all viable. So yes, your only alternative is individual. And number 1, and number 2, the number of panels is related to the usage, how much electricity you use in a year. And it's the number of panels is designed to offset that energy use. There's no point in having 10 panels if you only use 4 panels worth of electricity. You're just giving the money, you're just giving the electricity free to PG&E.
Mimi's use was estimated.
Yeah. So the use is estimated. Now, the question is for you, thank you, Barry, for pointing that out. So a number of you looked up your bills and gave us those actual numbers. In cases where we didn't have that, we used some estimating based on averages that we'd seen from other people in places like yours. And in this case, we've apparently used an estimate. So you might want to actually look through your past bills and add that up. I think Brad is your local sort of representative. So if you would chat with him, he can help you do that. And then we can make sure that you're getting the right amount.
Yeah,
Okay?
and yeah, thank you. And the other thing is that since I'm working right now, I'm hardly home, But maybe one day when I retire, I am home and then I will use more. So then
Yeah.
still would be based on estimate.
Yeah,
Because
so you
I'm,
might want to crank it up a bit for that, to allow for
so
that.
how many months I should be collecting, look at it and give it to Brad?
The full 12 months.
12 months for
Yeah,
last.
yeah, the last 12 months.
Okay, and then I will be forced to be individual, is that right?
That
So
is correct.
since the,
Yes.
and my prices would be higher.
Well, no, I mean, there was a quote there. There was an individual quote.
I
There was a
see.
shared quote and there was an individual quote. And the individual
see.
quote should be accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for initiating this and taking care of it. I really appreciate that.
Well, our pleasure. Thank you.
It's especially Adrian and yeah, and Barry and all the rest of the solar committee.
Next.
Barry, you got one?
If we don't have, this might have been asked, if we don't have enough room for 18 panels on our roof, how does that work?
Well, in that case, then if you don't have enough room for the number of panels suggested, then you would have to go with a smaller number. And as I said, you would offset less of your electricity. The system would cost you less. The rate of return you're getting on your investment remains the same, but you don't get to save all of your PG&E bill.
Okay, Philip, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks. My wife Nikki and I are in project 36 of Mutual 3 entry 1. And my question relates to the fact that we're in a fourplex and one of our residents has not been part of this, but we've been in email contact with her. She's currently on the East Coast and has not benefited from the stream of information that everyone else has been having, as far as we know. Anyway, she's coming back and we are hoping to meet with her and possibly if she decides to join in. My question is, how hard and fast are the deadlines that you have put before us? For example, the November 20th deadline in particular. She's not coming back until the 18th of November.
So the really hard deadline is December 1. We have to have contracts in place by December 1, or else the ability of the vendors to actually complete the interconnect applications in time to lock you into any M2 will be questionable. And they need essentially a couple of weeks, especially since Thanksgiving is involved there. So that's why we're back to the November 20th deadline. Okay. I don't know if you could talk to her. Well, if she's back on the 18th. Worst, if she's, if you could talk to her and just say, are you kind of interested? And then we could just put her name in as being interested and get a contract. And then if she decides not to sign it, well, fine. But that way she could participate.
And Philip, Adrian's absolutely right. And then I would add on top of that, obviously we're recording, this Q&A session. We're going to be recording the sessions, the presentations that the vendors each do most likely on Tuesday. Then we'll email out to all of you links so you can rewatch those. You can also just forward that email to her. So if she's got time and wants it, and she can watch, this recording, which will help her, kind of start. And then you can forward to her your quote, because we're betting that her unless her usage is way radically different than yours, the numbers for her would probably be close to yours. So again, it would give her a little bit more information to say, yep, I'd like to potentially go forward, give me a contract.
Brad, perhaps I should add that it's likely that that building, all three current interested parties would go individual rather than shared. And that should not stop those three going ahead. And they can bring on their fourth neighbor if she is interested later.
That's a good point, John. Okay,
Okay.
Barry, got on?
Yeah, Nace Ravalo asks, is yes is 25?
It's Ruvalo.
Ruvalo. Yeah, sorry, Nace. Is yes is 25-year production guarantee insured? I think I can answer that one because I've looked over their contracts. So they have an actual contract which spells out the terms of the production guarantee. And the amount, what the limit is, how much they would pay. My guess is that is not a separate insured item, that they don't pay, they self-insure themselves on that, but they contractually commit to that.
And Nace, if you want to, obviously we'd be willing to send you the terms and condition sheets for both the vendors. And so you can, and for those of you who don't know, Nace used to be I believe a Superior Court judge. So
The reason I asked that is, I mean, this industry is so evolving.
it is.
To think that, one company is going to be in business for the next quarter of a century is worrisome. So I don't know how important that guarantee is after the first 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of two backups to that, actually. One is and I'm not quite sure exactly how they are sort of funding that guarantee, but SunPower, it manufactures the panels that they use and the inverters. And SunPower also has a 25-year guarantee, and they also guarantee the performance of the panels, the degradation of the panels over a period of that time. They also guarantee those. Now, you could ask, is SunPower going to be around? Well, SunPower is a much bigger company. I don't know how big they are, several $100 million revenue now. They are pretty much 100% owned. They are public, so you can go check them out. I think it's at SNPR or SNPW or something on NASDAQ. But they're pretty much 70% owned by Total, the French fossil fuel giant. And so if I was going to bet on anybody sticking around for the 20-25 years, I'd be happy to bet on them. I'm not betting on myself to stay around for 25 years, but that's another story.
Hello, I'm Sophie Fang from M3-70. And I have a question because I don't understand MOD. Is that a one-time fee, or it's the fee for annually, or any extra fee after we install the solar energy?
And that is the permit fee, the one-time permit fee that MOD charges, for solar installation. But yes, there are annual expenses. And the annual expenses pretty much apply whether you're part of a shared system or an individual system. And so you should be aware of those and budget for them. Fortunately, they're not huge in any 1 year. Well, in total. One expense is you need to budget for washing the panels once or twice a year. It's only about $5 a panel, so it's not a big expense. You need to know that if and when the roof that your panels are on needs to be replaced, you'll be responsible for paying for the removal of your panels while they replace the roof and then the reinstallation. And that is probably about, $1,500, but will likely only need to be done once in the 25-year useful life of the system. Also, depending on which vendor you go with, you'll probably need to budget for a replacement of the inverter. The panels themselves are warranted for 25 years by the manufacturer. The inverter, that solar technology uses is warranted for 12 years, but will probably last, a couple of years longer than that. And so you got to budget for replacing that at least once during the 25 years. And that runs about $2,500 to $3,000. And what other expenses am I missing, Adrian and Barry? Any additional insurance premiums on your homeowner's insurance, to cover any loss that you might suffer. For example, the vendors do not cover loss of the system, and that's the loss of panels in the event of natural events like a real strong windstorm. If a meteor hits it, things like that. So you're probably going to want to talk to your homeowner's insurance company about coverage for your portion of the system. What did I miss, Adrian, Barry?
Umbrella, Brad, umbrella insurance, if you don't already have it, you're going to have to pay for every year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mimi.
Yes, I am on the lower floor, so but the unit up on the upstairs, would they need to give permit for those to be installed there, or how would this work?
No, you do not need to get permission from anywhere else in your building in order to put up a solar system. You are required by law, specifically AB 634, to notify them, but they can't say no.
Okay.
So every homeowner in a condo in California, condo slash co-op, has the legal right to put solar panels up and proportional to their space, and doesn't need to get permission from the other residents.
Okay. And for those washing process you talked about, are they specific companies that we have to call? Or I know the panel is cheap, but you call a serviceman to come, they charge $150 just to show up.
Well, and that's a good question. My guess is what we'll probably end up doing is just try to loosely organize an annual washing for people in the same mutual / entry, so that when the company comes out, they sweep through, just like right now MOD arranges for, and your mutual arranges for gutter cleaning, annual gutter cleaning, things like that. Yeah, the same thing can be done. So they come through and they sweep through, which will keep the cost down.
Yeah. One of the team, the shared solar team that's been working on this, Anna Urguru, she actually reached out and looked for a number of different companies that sort of specialize in doing this, and talked to a couple of them and got a quote from one that was, to sort of, if we can get to, 100 or so roofs to do at a time, they can come and, go wham through them and at a relatively cheap price, $3 a panel. So.
I mean, alternatively, you could choose to get up in the roof and do it yourself, but we highly recommend you don't do that.
Brad, why don't you pick on some people who have had their hands raised?
Yeah, how about William and Marilia Snyder?
Yeah, we just added an electric vehicle to our system. I
Yay!
turned in all the bills from the last year, and I still don't have any idea how much more this vehicle draws on our electricity.
And Adrian, you want to tackle that?
So it will, you will, depending on how you actually organize your charging, and if you change your tariff with PG&E, you can cut things back quite a bit. You cut your costs. There's a tariff that they have, which is an EV specific tariff that allows you to charge it from 9 o'clock at night until I think 6 in the morning for like 17 or 18 cents an hour or a kilowatt hour, which is significantly cheaper than the 30 cents during the regular day. And all EVs allow you to specify when you charge them. So that's a help right there. And then if you buy some extra panels, each panel that you buy, if you're doing this using the charging that way, each panel will generate about, depending on the car itself and it's, how efficient it is, but somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 miles per year per panel.
Oh,
So
wow.
you pay for that.
Yeah, well, we've been very judicious about our charging. We don't charge before 9 at night, and we've had the car probably charged it twice.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there might be a time when we do a lot more driving. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, most of us at Rossmoor, we don't have situations anymore where we have to commute. Thank goodness, and so probably mostly drive about 10,000 miles or something of that order, and so 3 or 4 panels extra would almost surely completely offset the cost of it.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll wait until we hear from somebody and
We haven't heard anything.
we haven't heard anything yet from anybody.
Okay.
On the panel, nobody's contacted us for a presentation or anything.
Oh, so you didn't get the quote, the preliminary quote?
Did you get a preliminary quote?
No, I didn't get it.
No, we didn't get a preliminary quote. We received emails on this Zoom meeting, and that was about it.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll check. Please check your junk mail because a number of people did find them there, and we'll try and resend it.
It would have been an email from Adrian Byram. Adrian, yeah.
He's on my list, in my address book, so I should have come right through.
Yeah. Well, I'll try again.
Okay. Good enough.
Okay, and we got Barry.
Well, I was just going to say, Bill, to maximize the chance that we'll send you that, you should send an email to Adrian asking for him to resend the quote.
Okay.
I'm just
And then I can reply to it. That would be sure to get it.
Ron Snyder suggests, why don't we make the standard contracts and other vendor information available on the shared resource page, but in something that people don't have to password to see. That's a suggestion there. Adrian, if you can answer that, I think you can answer whether that.
I'm a little reluctant to do that because if it's put on the web, on a web page that everybody can get to, that means it's totally public. And they provided those to us in confidence, for this purpose. So I'd want to ask, what I'd prefer to do would be to, well, let's put it this way. If you go ahead and say, send me a contract, you will get the contract with all the terms. And you will get that within the next 2 weeks, whereas, of saying, go ahead. So and it will be the contract that's specific to your situation. So I think I'd rather wait until we get there and do that, because otherwise it's going to be a bit of a problem.
And Adrian, that's a good idea. And then there's also another option, and that is if anybody really wants to get a sneak peek at the terms and conditions of the contracts as they currently sit, and they're slightly in flux just because we're doing some minor negotiations with both vendors to put in a couple clauses that we think are going to be beneficial for us. If anybody's interested, I'm willing to, sometime, early, middle next week, just to schedule a Zoom session solely to go over, contract terms. And so if you're interested, just, send me an email, say, yes, I want to be in that. Okay.
Brad, why don't you ask Carl?
Oh, yeah, Carl. Keep forgetting. And then John Murphy after that.
Hello. Yeah, a couple of things. One, I wanted to know if in fact you take the standard deduction, will you still receive a tax credit? And is that credit useful if you're taking a standard deduction? And the other thing I wanted to comment was in shared systems, because of our current configurations and because all of our building meter boxes are at capacity as far as I know, it means regardless of whether you're going to go into a carport or you're going to install this on a building, you're going to have to add separate service. And I might point out that adding separate service to these standalone carports that don't have enough power is actually an advantage to the mutuals, because we can install another meter to that new service that could accommodate electric vehicle charging.
In the future.
I am currently looking into shared meter, because obviously if there are 12 spaces, no one's going to pay to put service for 12 level 2 charging stations. So I really think the only ultimate solution is sub-metering. And if someone wants to talk to me about sub-metering, I'd appreciate any input.
Okay.
So 2 questions.
Carl's absolutely right about what he just said.
And
the
what about
plan
the tax
is that
credit?
the plan is that with the trenching, if we go to a carport and trench, that they will Solar Tech said that they will install a couple of extra conduits so that we can run
A meter
conductors out
slot.
there for
Yeah.
EV.
But then again, if you're going to go into a building, you're still going to have to trench to a transformer, because PG&E will not allow you to add new meters, which means you have a choice of either trenching to the transformer to put new service in, or replacing all of the meters and upgrading all of the meters in that meter bank to the existing service if there is capacity on the service.
Yeah.
Both are expensive propositions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those costs have been allowed for in the quotes for shared solar. But you're right, it does add to the cost.
And the other thing is, I really think that it might make more sense for shared solar systems to approach mutuals in terms of a contract as opposed to a policy. And, there are sample, contracts available from the Department of Energy, for example, that would guarantee the mutual's rights. They're, nice tailorable contracts, so that you can hopefully cut down on some of the legal costs in putting this together.
And let me tackle your first part question about the
tax.
right, about the deduction, standard deduction. And NACE is going to remind me that, we're not CPAs, and we're not, giving tax advice. But given the fact that I am a former CPA, I'll give you a little bit of tax advice, and the answer as to whether or not taking the standard deduction makes a difference or not is depends. And it depends on your total income, right? The currently under current tax law, the solar investment tax credit is 26%. It's a tax credit, which is a dollar for dollar reduction of your tax liability. And so you calculate you take your income, subtract your deductions, whether they're standard or itemized. And if you have, liability left over, then the solar investment tax credit will offset that. And if you don't use it all up, I believe you can carry it forward for 1 year. But if you have no tax liability, you get no advantage currently. Again, I believe that the Build Better Act, is looking at maybe changing that to making it a 30% tax credit that's refundable. But right now, that's not the way the tax law is written. Right, Paul? Right?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Right. Okay, Barry, got another one, or should we go to John Murphy?
Go to John.
John, unmute yourself.
All right. Yeah, just an aside on cleaning the panels. I happened to look today at a company that offers that service, and they also offer another service very dear to my heart, which is the cleaning of your dryer vent. And obviously those two things could go hand in hand once they're up on the roof. And secondly, your point, Brad, about climbing on the roof. Here is a director from Mutual 3 who wants to give you some words on that.
In Mutual 3, owners are not allowed to climb on the roof under any circumstances, and we don't want you to fall off and hurt yourself.
And thank you, Nan. Okay.
Okay, I do have a question here.
Okay, then we'll go to Luther.
Nancy Sorensen asks, how quickly will MOD move on approvals required on their end?
What we've been told is that if we can get a group of permit applications for systems, and bunch them together, it gives them economies of scale, and they can move on them much faster than if we give them onesies. Partially because one of the things we're going to ask the solar champions for each mutual / project to do is take the first look at them to make sure they are in fact complete before they even get submitted to MOD. Because obviously one of the challenges that MOD faces is most of the applications you get are not complete. They've got to bounce them back. Takes a lot of time and effort. So, okay, Luther.
Yes, I want to go back to earlier to something that Adrian said, and that was about the choices you have is either going in with shared or with individual. And is it my understanding, and this is for clarification from you, Adrian, if you choose individual program, don't you have to have that installed, get the contract and have it actually installed by the deadline, which isn't that December 31st for the M3 benefit? It has to be your system has to be installed by that date. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this is what we're trying to play this loophole. So what we've been told is that if this interconnect agreement or application is made by the installer prior to the end of the year, that you will be grandfathered in, even though the system itself is not installed until early next year.
Now you're referring to an individual system as I presented.
Yes. Yes,
That's also the same if you're in a shared system. We can sign the contract and agree, but it doesn't have to be installed by December 31st to obtain the NEM2 benefits.
that is correct.
So
Yeah.
there's really no difference then here.
That at
And-
this point, there is no difference. That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a micro bit of difference in that for a shared system of over 30 kilowatt, you've got a year to do the installation. You know, for a smaller system, especially an individual one, you know, it got a shorter period of time, like maybe 3 months or 3 or 4 months.
So, yeah, so there is actually a significant difference there. If you have a large enough system, enough people participating, which is probably around 5 or 6 in most of the mutuals where there's electric heating and cooling. So in Mutual 8 for you, Luther, for example, Carl's, they have a building there, 2100 Skycrest, with a bunch of people in it. Both of those would be over the 30 kilowatt limit. And there's a tariff in place right now, that has been for some time, that actually guarantees you the grandfathering. So you're not at risk at all if you have a large enough shared system. If you're below that limit, it's like 3 or 4 people in a shared system, then you are at risk if the PUC decides to go some other way.
Okay, and one other, if I still have the floor here for
Yeah.
one additional question. And this probably has to be directed later in an email to Brad. If I recall earlier, it was said Brad would handle questions about your kilowatt factoring. We got our quote back yesterday. And it had said, now we have a monthly bill of about $150 to $200 a month, electric bill through the whole year. We got a quote back saying that we were 262%, I guess, above average over others living in the same building or a similar type of floor plan, whatever. I don't remember the specifics of how they factored that in. But 262% above average, I'm shocked. I think there's something drastically wrong in that factoring.
Okay, let me address that, since I'm the one who probably generated that number, or my computer program did. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go look it up and get back to you with a specific answer, because I don't know why.
Yeah, and of course that raised the cost of installation. I mean,
Yeah.
really shockingly high.
Yeah.
And I looked at some neighbors, what they had, and I'm like, really?
Well, it's probably a misreporting of the amount of usage. Somehow we didn't get the right amount of usage in your thing. And that's partly why I actually did that, was to flag it so that if it's remarkably different, if your usage is remarkably different than the average around you, then there's probably something wrong with that usage, and we should check it and make sure that it's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Luther, it's Jim. Let me reinforce what Adrian just said, because I've looked at the estimated usage for everyone in Mutual 8, and you're way out of line. So there's something wrong with that estimate. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah,
I'll help you work with it along with Adrian to get that straightened out.
yeah, either that or you're running a marijuana grow lab in your.
No.
And so just one other thing we ought to mention quickly is one of the things I mentioned, that we're in the process of negotiating some tweaks to the terms and conditions. Specifically, one of the major tweaks is about a cancellation clause. Because there's 2 major issues that still need to be resolved, to actually decide whether or not to go ahead and actually have this system installed. One is are you in fact going to be grandfathered into M2? And again, we'll know that once the CPUC actually makes the ruling, most likely January, could be February. And the other one is if your mutual needs to change their solar policy to enable what you want to do, are they likely to do that? And so either one of those could be, fatal to whether your decision of whether or not you want to actually go ahead and have your system installed. And so we're in the process of negotiating with the vendor that you can cancel when both those are clear, if you need to, and I think that the cancellation fee will be $500 and the actual amount of the cost of the work that the vendor has done for you, whichever is greater. But to keep that cost lowest, we've asked the vendors to initially do the minimum amount of work they need to in order to get the interconnect application submitted. And then once you get that done, sit on it until we find out what the CPC rules. And so we're hoping that by doing that, they can keep the cost below $500, in which case that's your risk. But it could be higher depending on how much work they actually end up doing. So, and that probably is confusing to everyone. I know because it's confusing to me. But Mimi, are you back again for another question?
Yes, my carport is separate, and so I was wondering, but I have a hybrid car right now, but when I get a electric, so I just need an outlet over there, and I was wondering how would that be possible, and then how do we protect that outlet from the misuse from people that they don't have the solar panel?
And Mimi, that opens up, as Carl Brown will tell you, that opens up a significant can of worms, because whether or not you can charge your plug-in hybrid or an EV in a outlet in a detached carport is solely up to your mutuals in their policy on EV charging. And so what you need to do is understand what that policy is, work with your mutual, and also the solar panel will probably be separate unless you happen to get lucky and you're part of a shared solar system that is put on the roof of the carport that you're in, and it's probably going to be even then it's probably going to be extremely difficult, if not already impossible, for you to take advantage of the electricity produced by that solar system to power the car. But they're unfortunately in Rossmoor, especially when you're talking about detached carports, they're almost apples and water. Oil and water don't really mix too well. Is that fairly accurate, Adrian?
Yep. The EV charging thing and what we're talking about here about solar are really disconnected, except in a rather more general way.
Unless you happen to be one of the lucky ones that has an attached carport or garage.
Yeah,
that's a different story.
And so then I wouldn't be able to use, if I get electric car, that outlet, that would use the solar energy. I should use the regular outlet.
That is correct. Unless your mutual does something new and changes this whole thing around, it's a real problem. Like I said, the two really are not connected at this point.
Yeah. Is it possible to put like one panel on top of the carport and a few on?
It would not be, it doesn't generate enough electricity to make it worthwhile.
And it wouldn't be economically advantageous.
If I may, in mutual aid, for instance, we have a policy that if you want to charge an EV car, you have to have, you know, in the carport, you have to have a dedicated panel set up for your car. And you also have to get an alterations permit from MOD, and they have rules and regulations as well. And that is separate from any solar panels on the carport roofs, which we don't have.
Right. And Carl, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question or make a comment?
Brad, I have a question.
Okay, Len, go ahead.
A lot of the chat questions are not being answered. I don't know who's looking at those, but there's a lot of them on there. Nobody's addressing them. But my question was, I live in a 12-unit building. Nobody else is interested right now in solar but me. Can I put as many panels on my roof as I need? Or do I only get my only share of allotted roof space between the 12 units? It's a 3-story building.
And the ladder.
My little section. That's all I get, right?
Yeah, you get you're in Mutual 70, right, Lynn?
No.
Mutual 3 up in top of Stanley Dollar.
Buildings.
Oh, in 49. Oh, okay. So actually, that's an interesting thing. And you need to work with Susan Harris and Ron Snyder, because we have an interesting situation there where there are some 4-unit buildings that have actually very big roofs. And so by using shared solar, we could probably accommodate you on one of those roofs and thereby provide you with enough power.
And do you,
rather than just allotting you the 6 panels worth of space that you have on your roof in that building.
But then you'd have to go shared, Lynn.
yeah, but
Right.
Nobody in my building wants it. So
No, but you don't have to. The point is you're sharing with the people in the 4-unit
Okay.
building.
Okay. The other question is, we have through PG&E Life Care because my husband's handicapped.
Yeah.
And so we get a big savings on our kilowatts. The you know the flat fee part is much more. And when we met with a solar last summer, 2 solar people came out and talked to all the people in our building. And when I told him what our bill was every month, and he said, well, all you're going to save is about 10% a month. So I don't know if it'll be worth it to me to invest that kind of money in solar if that's really true. I'm only going to save 10% a month. I won't live long enough to recoup the reward.
Yeah. It's an interesting economic little dance. So you get everybody who's participating, PG&E customer or MC, you get a so-called baseline allowance where you get essentially a 7 cent per kilowatt hour discount on your solar use. Then there's a medical baseline or medical allowance that's another 500 kilowatt hours. And then I think there are some other programs as well that might extend that beyond that. I'm not sure. The effect of and I've run the numbers a number of times, the effect of the additional 500 kilowatt hour thing kind of pushes the payback from, say, 7 years out to maybe 8 or 8.5. But it'd be worthwhile checking your bill specifically to make sure that we're understanding correctly, and then plugging the numbers in to make sure that in fact, we're not misleading you to think you're going to get a much more greater savings, or not causing you to not act and then miss out.
Thank you.
So if you could work with Susan and I'll that'd be great, and I'll help her figure that out. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Adrian. Okay. And there are some other questions in the chat. Well, let's pick. I think we've answered Mary Franklin's about the carport roofs. There's one here from Steve Hirsch. Says my usage for the past 12 months was 4,600 kilowatt hours, but my total cost of electricity in my bill after the care and other discounts was only 306 for the year. Kind of sounds like it's kind of similar to the situation that Lynn is in, maybe even more. And how could an investment of over $10,000 break even in the estimated 7-month break even period? Well, I think if you go back and Stephen, look at the quote, it's not 7 months, it's probably 7 years is what was the break even period. And so the answer Adrian gave Lynn about, the fact that, you're on medical baseline, makes the payback period, pushes the payback period out somewhat, also applies. Okay.
Although I must say, Steve, I don't believe your numbers. I don't want to sound cruel, but 306 divide turn, that's 6 cents a kilowatt hour. There's no way in God's green earth that you pay 6 cents a kilowatt hour in California. In British Columbia, you do, but not here. I think you may be, if you've got a bill that's MCE and PG&E, you have to add both the MCE component and the PG&E component. Both of those are included in the cost estimates. Both of those receive credits. I've seen that mistake being made by someone else, where they just looked at the MCE portion or just the PG&E portion.
Okay. Do you want to try and take one more, or we want to call it a?
Okay.
Seems like maybe we need to address questions in the chat that haven't been answered.
Yeah.
In some way,
Yep.
maybe we could do that with an email blast, or, I don't know quite how, but.
Yep. Barry's suggesting that you'd be a good person to do that, Susan. Yeah, and that was our plan.
Yeah, so we're capturing the chat, right? Okay, good.
Yes.
And then we can, yeah, so the idea would be we'd capture it, put answers in it, and then blast that out to everybody who participated in the meeting.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else got any question they want to ask live?
Once, going twice.
Otherwise,
I have one. I was wondering.
Mimi. Oh, and then Lynn Ferret does too.
I was wondering, how should we know what is the age of our? Sorry. So I was wondering, can we get to know how old our roof is?
Yes, you can talk. You can talk to your. You can talk to your someone on your mutual board, and they can find out for you, because they have access to the roof replacement schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Lynn, you had another question?
This is Carol, and I have a question. I think I sent an email to the website that I have a new neighbor who just moved in who is interested, and I was wondering if it was received, if you're aware of it. They are at 3747 1A.
Okay.
It's Mark. His name, the name is STULL.
Okay. I'll check. And see if we are ignoring
Because
it.
right now I'm only can have individual because they're out of the 4 units. I'm the only one that's indicated being interested. One of the other 4 units has just gone pending. And I have no idea who it is. It's purchased it. How would we let them know about the information?
I'm afraid we won't be able to.
Okay. even through the realtor.
At this point, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, we have to be in contract by December 1st.
Right.
And if they're just pending, if they haven't purchased, there's no way that's going to happen. So I think we're going to have to, unfortunately, say that, that's just the way it is.
Okay, so if there's 2 of us out of 4, would that be enough for shared?
Are you in mutual 70?
Yes.
Maybe not, but like I said, there's not a, there's some advantages to shared, there's some advantages to individual. And the price differential is not that high in this particular case. So it may be that it wouldn't matter to you whether it's individual or shared.
Okay.
Would you please discuss the advantages and disadvantage of each one, if possible?
Right now. Look at the attachment, it's there, and they're on page 3 or 4. There's a section that describes that.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm looking back through the chat questions because I still remember seeing one from someone. They asked a number of things, part of which, one of the questions I do remember, which was, can I add more panels later? And I think the answer is typically no.
I mean, the answer is you may, but then if you do, you will fall into the new tariff. And they will reassess your system and say, oh, okay, great. You're now under any M3 and you need to pay us a lot more money. So that's PG&E's doing its thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Anybody got any questions? I think what we're going to do is, at least some of us are going to light the drinking lamp.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for attending.
Yes.
Appreciate your interest. Look
Very
forward
much.
to moving forward.
Thank you again
And,
for your initiative.
and remember, we're repeating, we're gluttons for punishment enough. We're going to be repeating this on Sunday at 2:30 also. So, and you may want to watch that one too, because I'll bet we give different answers to the same questions. No, hopefully not. And Paul's going to keep us, on the straight and narrow.
What?
Don't forget to stop the recording.
Good idea. And remind me to save the chat stream before I exit out of here. Let's see. Actually, Barry recorded it, so.
Can I still ask a question while everybody's gone?
Yes, you may. Yes, you can, Mimi.
I'm disappointed that I can't use for the vehicle. If I couldn't use that, because that would be a major, usage of electricity.
Yes.
So is there a way that, like an outlet would be, because I'm the end unit, it can be like on the wall, because I also have access to the parking area that would be on the wall, that would be outside, that attached to my building.
And you're not gonna like this answer maybe, but you've got to talk to your mutual board reps, because that's purely a mutual decision as to how they, because they own, that space, right? And they're responsible for it, and they're the ones that set the policies, for use of mutual property, and the typically the charge, the electrical circuit in detached carports is metered to the mutual. So
Oh.
it's mutual electricity, right, Luther?
Correct.
So that's why you got to talk to you got to work through your mutual board reps.
So like if I get an electric car and I use my detached outlet to charge it, it goes to the mutual, it doesn't come to my bill?
Well, what Luther's going to tell you is to do it right, what the mutual likely will require you to do is put in a new electrical circuit with its own meter, and an outlet at your carport stall. And that's totally doable. It's not cheap.
Oh. And if we have that, how do we assure that someone, like if, not that my neighbor would do, but if someone uses that outlet for charging their car?
And what I would do is I would get a vicious German Shepherd, and
come on, Brad.
Well, hey, I'm just saying, I never claimed to be a nice guy. Right, Luther?
No.
Well, she brings up actually a good point.
She
And
does.
I don't have an answer for it. You might contact alterations department, Bill Parsons, and see what they might recommend. Now, I know they do give meters. Once you apply for that app, the alteration permit for a EV charging station, that's what it's called. It comes with a kit. I know Jim Ware's got one out here in Mutual 8. And I'm not sure, but I don't think, once he unplugs that, I think just about anybody could plug in an EV in there while you weren't looking.
They could.
Yeah. Yes. Is there would be a box, we lock it up? It like a lock.
Like I say, you might want to consult with PG&E or alterations department.
Right.
I see. Okay.
So what we're saying that's above our pay grade.
Right.
Okay. I will figure that out. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
I really appreciate your effort and your initiatives.
And thank you for your interest and for getting an EV.
Yes, that's right. But if I can't charge it, then that would be a problem. I better stay with my hybrid, huh?
Well, but there's another option that, refresh my memory, what mutual are you in?
3.
And what project?
35.
And what I would do is talk to your project director. And because some of the projects and mutuals are doing more investigation into putting up a shared high-speed EV charging station in the guest parking space. Because because that might be cheaper. For example, I know the Mutual 48 did that up at the top of Ptarmigan. They put in a dual headed charging space. Fortunately, they had 3 or 4 guest parking spaces that are seldom used, and they put up a dual head 75 amp charging head on 2 heads. For the residents, the residents that use it, reimburse the mutual for the electricity. But work with your district director and say, hey, because this issue is going to come to a head more and more with each passing week or month. It's not going to go away.
Yes, but I still can't use my solar panels.
No.
Yeah.
Well, you can if you put it in an individual system, but it would cost you more money than it's worth.
Yeah, but because I'm the only one that is interested in my entry, So it seems that I think Adrian said that, or you said that I will be forced to go individual because
Yes.
nobody else is there and nobody else has an electric car anyway. I don't think would be possible that they put a station for if there is not much use for.
Yeah, and what I would suggest you do is on the quotes you got from Adrian. I believe he put in there who your solar champion is. And I don't know. I haven't gotten them memorized for Mutual 3. But yeah, I'd work with your solar champion and to figure out what's the best solution for you.
Okay. Somebody said I haven't sent my number in, said that I have to send it to you. Is that right? How many kilowatts I used
No,
last year?
should have gone to Barry Bryan.
To Barry. Okay.
And again, if you didn't send it in, then what Adrian
Just
would have
came back.
done. Okay.
Hers,
Oh,
Mimi's was an estimate. She did not send it in.
That's right. I was on medical leave. I
Right.
had a big issue. Yes. But can I send it in now?
Yeah. But
Okay.
you can email it to me and I can add it to the system.
Okay.
And then Barry, Zoom will not let me save the chat stream. Can you get it?
Yes. Okay, it is saved.
Good.
It is saved, and when I stop, it'll convert the recording.
Good. Okay.
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 Thank
I'm
you,
gonna-
guys.
Yeah,
Me
I'm
too.
gonna leave now.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.